What's good, everyone? Cammy here from UK Nets fans, and as ever, I'm joined by Aidan McConaughey for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. It's Sunday, 31st October, and today we're chatting about a leaked jersey, Joe Tsai's recent comments, recapping the recent games, and much more. Before we get into things, make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK to UK pod, and check us out on YouTube where you can watch all our episodes. So with that out of the way, let's get into things, starting with the Nets news. Aidan, in the past few days, there's been several leaks of the alleged City jersey. And this jersey, for those that haven't seen it, is predominantly navy with some red and white detailing and features all the kind of Nets badges throughout the various iterations of the franchise. What do you think of this leak? Are you a fan or not of this leaked jersey?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to have been floating around for absolutely ages, this one, but now we're starting to see those weird images in like foreign shops all over the world where like the jerseys have went on test sale, and yeah, they're nice and in person. I'm not as maybe as excited as other people. I've seen a lot of people get really excited. Totally get it, obviously, with the New Jersey links, and even going further back than that, the kind of New York Nets links. So yeah, it's nice to see people getting excited about seeing that type of jersey. For me, I think a lot of the excitement is kind of gone after the tie-dye jerseys last year. I mean, wearing it right now, I absolutely love this jersey. And I think just because it's so similar, I'm not that bothered about it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's really nice in the navy, but I just think it's almost like it's been done. But apart from that, yeah, it's a nice jersey, and it'll look good in the court. I'm sure they'll have a lot of fun again with the court design as well, with to match the jersey. So looking forward to see that. But the thing that's kind of getting at me is that if this is the City Edition jersey this year, I'm kind of a bit disappointed. I don't know about you, but I mean, I usually get the most excited about the kind of City Edition jerseys because that's when they're really creative with it. Like obviously we saw the Basquiat's. I know you weren't that keen on the Basquiat's, but they were a fun kind of design jersey, and we've obviously had the Biggie jerseys before that, which were really, really cool when they came out. So yeah, I've seen a lot of people saying that they're maybe like anniversary jerseys instead with the 75th anniversary. So potentially it's that, or and they'll do something else for City Editions. But I don't know. What are you kind of thinking about them with the initial photos that came out?
When it doesn't scream Brooklyn Nets to me, it certainly screams just Nets in general, like I kind of said, with it referring to, like you say, all the different Nets from years gone by. And I mean, I think when it comes to the City Edition, there's other ways we could have went. The Basquiat was certainly a more out there jersey. This is maybe a bit more of a Kama. Just I don't know how you could kind of put it. It's not as out there, certainly. Like even like the two we've both got on for those watching, it's not really screaming. This is fantastic. I don't think it's one. Certainly, as fans who've only been fans of the team in the Brooklyn Nets era, maybe that's the reason we're not feeling quite as attached to it. I mean, it looks quite nice. I'd imagine it's going to look quite nice on court, and the court's probably going to add up as well. But yeah, I think there's only probably so much you can do, and I'd like to hope that the Nets do have some good things up their sleeves for future years to come. But with that out the way, in the kind of past few days as well, Nets owner Joe Tsai has done an interview with Nets Daily, and there were several interesting highlights from that. So, from confirming his long-term commitment to the team, admitting he's got all the patience in the world of Kyrie Irving, kind of had discussions with him regarding his COVID situation. And I'd also kind of picked up that he's almost labelled Joe Harris as a third star in Kyrie's absence. I don't know if you maybe took anything else from that interview that I didn't, but I think they're probably the highlights of that interview.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Nets Daily, first of all, for getting an interview with Joe Tsai. I mean, that's a fantastic interview to get for them. And obviously at this time of the season where there's been so much going on, it's nice that Joe Tsai's got the trust in someone like Nets Daily to kind of report a good story about a lot of important topics. I mean, first of all, obviously confirms his long-term kind of commitment to the Nets. We knew that was coming. I think obviously when Joe Tsai initially got involved with the Nets, he was always wanting to take over as the sole owner of the team. He always had a vision then. He bought into a lot of what Sean Marks was going to do. So he is the right guy to obviously to lead this Nets team at the top. And yeah, I do respect what he's done so far. I can't really complain too much about what he's done with the Nets. So happy that he's coming out and saying that. Obviously, the big story here is with Kyrie, and we've said that we're not going to talk about it too much, but I really found these comments quite interesting. And I don't know about you, but it kind of makes me a bit uncomfortable how comfortable they seem about the situation. And it's potentially that it would be different if we started, say, 6-0 to the season, and we've came out and we can say, like, we've been playing absolutely fantastic. We clearly don't need Kyrie right now. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't need Kyrie. As Kevin Durant said the other day, it's like, yeah, we miss Kyrie Irving. And they have done. I mean, some of the scoring so far has been really, really poor. And we need a guy like Kyrie to come in and get those 25 points a game, just to get us over the line in those wins where we're maybe not defending as well as we should. And for Tsai to come out and make comments like that, say he's comfortable. I know he's as media trained as they probably come, being a multi-billionaire, but I don't know. I wasn't too happy with how comfortable they do seem about the whole situation. I know Steve Nash has seemed very comfortable. Obviously, he was texting Kyrie saying that he was just chatting kind of personal stuff. He wasn't chatting team stuff with him. I don't know. I assume there's definitely more going behind the scenes than they're actually showing. I know they can't come out and say that they're still raging that he's not had this vaccine yet, but they just seem really, really comfortable with the situation. And I hope it doesn't end up. I hope they don't end up paying for it at the end of the year if they just let him sit out and we kind of lose a year of contending because we don't have someone like that in the team. But yeah, just finally, obviously, his comments on Joe Harris as being the third star. I love Joe Harris, but he's not the third star in this team. I mean, I remember last year calling him the big four and he being the fourth member, but he's been really disappointing recently, personally, and I think he's just not had the consistency to be labelled a star. And I think for a star, you need to be consistent. You can potentially have one off game, but that's one off game in 5 or 6, and it seems to be he's only having one good game out of 5. So yeah, I can see why he's doing it. Joe Harris is getting paid a lot of money, and he's got to back the guys that are getting paid. But yeah, he's not a third star for me, and I can see why he's doing it, but not for me. What about you?
I mean, I think the Kyrie comments were certainly very interesting. The fact, like you said, when he was, I think he was asked, how does it feel like doing without Kyrie? And he says, well, it's fine, we've won games without him. And it's like, we've won a few games. We're 6 games into the season. I don't know how you can, obviously, like you say, he's very media trained. He's not going to come out and go, yeah, we're really missing him. We're struggling. We're desperate for him to come back. And just the conversations on the vaccine, I think fair play to Joe Tsai. He seems to have went about it in the right way. He's still respecting Kyrie's decision and is trying to ultimately educate Kyrie from a collective point of view rather than from a personal point of view, and kind of point out the bigger picture of it all, whilst obviously accepting that Kyrie has his own views and the views that he's entirely entitled to. I'm completely on board with you saying Joe Harris isn't that third star as much as we all love Joe on this podcast. Yeah, it's one of those. I don't know if it's maybe just one of those to boost his confidence with his season, maybe not having started well with the season ending last season how it did. I think you could probably make the case that LaMarcus Aldridge at the moment is that third star in Kyrie Irving's absence. But yeah, I think with the kind of news out the way, it's time we talk on some games when it was a bit of an up and down week for the Nets. Last week, Matt and I podded just before the Nets started their home kind of stint against the Hornets, and we were all pretty confident that we were going to pick up a win, but that wasn't the case as the Nets fell 105-95. Aiden, the second half was a bit of a disaster. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first Nets game that I've listened to and I've not actually watched it because I was on a long drive back from England and I was listening to the game and I thought, I'll chuck that on. It'll be brilliant. We'll listen to the Nets, trounce the Hornets, and that'll make this drive fly by. But yeah, in the first half, they were good. I mean, we went in with a 8-point lead into the break. I mean, Kevin Durant was the main man behind that. But we just saw something in the second half, which has been an ongoing theme for the Nets for years now. And they just came out the second half and they just looked flat. And it was we only scored 37 points in the second half. And you just need to look at the Nets team. How is that team only scoring 37 points and a half? It just seems absurd. And the Hornets, they just were licking their lips when they saw this. A young Hornets team they saw that the Nets were there for the taking in the second half. And they dominated the Nets on both ends. I mean, for a home opener, for the Nets to come out like that is really, really disappointing, because usually, even going back to the Kenny Atkinson era, they came out for the home opener and they were always up for it. But yeah, they just looked really, really flat in total. I mean, the Hornets were on a lot of plays for LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges in the third quarter, and then the famous Nets killer Ish Smith turned up with 11 points in the fourth. And we used to let those things slide when we had like the D'Angelo Russell era, but see now we can't let guys like Ish Smith turn up in the fourth and score 11 points. But I mean, I had a quick look at the box score when I was doing my notes, and it really does speak volumes. Obviously, Kevin Durant with 38 points, Harden with only 15, and then no other net in double figures after that. It's blatantly obvious that we just need guys to step up, and we're not asking for mammoth numbers. We're not looking for someone to take an all-star leap. We're just looking for people to fill in those 25 points or so that Kyrie wouldn't normally come up with. And you've just got to look at guys like Joe Harris, and I don't want to go on about Joe, but he really needs to start putting in those scoring numbers, because he is getting more shots. They're just not going down. And they will come. I'm sure they will come for Joe, but during this time period that we don't know how long it's going to last, we really need other guys to step up in Kyrie's absence. And yeah, 37 points. KD scored 38 points in the entire game, and the Nets scored 37 points to the team in the second half. Just says everything. So yeah, disappointing for this one. What about you? What did you think?
I mean, it was the Kevin Durant show, like you say, 38 points, and you almost felt sorry for KD after this. He was the only guy in the team that was really making anything happen. Harden's early season struggles kind of continued. He's not been the James Harden that I think we were expecting. Still maybe struggling for a bit of conditioning off the back of his injury, and he's kind of said that he can't get that 20, 30 points anymore. And I don't know if I've maybe read the comments out of context or just taken them in the wrong context, but that's very worrying to come out and say, I don't think I can manage 20, 30 points when you've been one of the most durable guys and you've scored 40 a night for years in Houston. Yes, you come to the Nets, it's a new situation, but to then kind of go, yeah, I can't quite manage 20 when you've been one of the best scorers in the league, it does make for some worrying reading and listening, but I'm hoping it's just in my current physical status, I can't manage it. I need to manage my kind of condition to make sure I can play and be there. And I mean, to be fair, if that's the way it is, and he is doing it so he can actually be there for the team rather than overdo it and injure himself, or overdo it and be unable to play for 2 quarters a night or whatever, it's completely understandable. But we certainly need a fully fit James Harden back as soon as possible. KD, it was really thanks to him that we kind of kept in touch with the Hornets for as long as we did. And had it not been for him, that scoreline would have been far, far worse. A very, very strong night from him. I think that goes without saying. And I think, and I hope, as much as I love watching KD, that we don't just rely on him every night to deliver and try bail us out, because there is going to be nights where KD won't manage to have his 30-odd points, as difficult as that sounds to hear. But I really don't want that becoming a habit. Like you say, we kind of need everyone else stepping up. If you can get Harden getting 20 to 25, KD about 30, you're looking for everyone else to get about 10. And you should be there or thereabouts most nights. You'll get the odd guy who will maybe go off, get 15, 16, 17. And that's really what you're needing. And that sounds so simple and maybe so cliche that you need everyone to contribute, but it's true. And we don't just need them contributing, but we need them contributing consistently too. But I think with that said, it's time we talk about the dub that we achieved over the Washington Wizards, a game that I said I wasn't too confident heading into, but we came away 104 to 90 winners. And I believe you want to talk to me about Bruce Brown, who was excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to talk about a win against the Wizards after some of those disaster classes that we saw last year against them that we were absolutely gutted about. But yeah, for this one, to get a win was really important after a game like that Charlotte game. And this was the first time this season that we saw Bruce Brown return to the starting 5. And for me personally, we immediately saw a massive difference in the intensity, especially compared to the second half and the night before. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Javon Carter, who has been good defensively for the Nets. I'd say he's been great defensively, actually. I've really enjoyed watching him play on that end. But he's just not getting the offensive numbers. I mean, I'm not going to list off what they are, but they're very, very bad, like considering how how many minutes he's had coming into this team, I wasn't sure if he was going to get any, but I've always thought that Bruce should be that guy that slides in there to make up those minutes, especially how good he was last year. And I was disappointed for him at the start of the year when he wasn't getting any minutes at all. I felt that was quite harsh from Steve Nash, but there's only so many guys that can get minutes, so it was good to see him back in. But anyway, yeah, I just thought he had such a good impact on both ends for the Nets in this one. I think he had 14 points and 3 rebounds. And for Bruce, it maybe doesn't jump off the box score sheet as usual. You usually see maybe getting a few more rebounds than that. But it was just his intensity defensively, which was really something that didn't go unnoticed. And especially in like a second game in a back-to-back, someone like that to come into the starting lineup just gives other guys that energy. We used to say kind of Kyrie's intensity on the defensive end rubbed off on other guys. I think you can say the same for Bruce Brown. He just comes in, and I was laughing at his comments afterwards that he was self-proclaiming himself as an energizer bunny, which is just the perfect way to describe him, because he is just an injection of energy, which the Nets really, really needed. And obviously the Nets held the Wiz to a season low for the Nets of 90 points, which I think you can put a lot of that down to Bruce Brown, because watching the game back earlier, he was just so impactful on the defensive end, and it's just a huge factor for the Nets. And we've always said he's kind of a player that other teams maybe wouldn't have on their team, and he wouldn't get minutes, but just in this Nets team, and there's so many shooters and so many talented players, he's just the perfect additional piece to come in and do the business. So in terms of him being in the starting lineup going forward, I think it's the spot to lose. And I certainly don't see him as that guy who's maybe the fifth player, the fifth name on the team sheet, coming out and losing his position. I think he's slightly higher than that. So yeah, good to see him back in, and he really did do the business. What about you?
So I'm going to sing the praise of another man who's done the business lately since coming in, and that is Patty Mills. I'm going to ask you before I go and elaborate on my point, could we be looking at a sixth man of the year in Patty Mills?
Yeah, could do. I think they really need to kind of give him some good minutes, and obviously if Kyrie comes back in, that could impact that. But otherwise, I would certainly put a bit of money on that.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement as well. I think he made a very, very nice contribution off the bench as we picked up our first home win of the season, 21 points in 23 minutes, and continued with his red-hot shooting from three-point range. Shot 5 from 9 from 3, and he's averaging 51.5% from deep this season, which is a team best and some 14% better than Bruce Brown, who's second, believe it or not. Joe Harris, I think, is 5th or 6th. It's quite close between 2nd and 5th and 6th. It's quite, you're talking minimal percent, but even still, the fact Mills is that far out is very impressive. And I don't think there'd be many who'd have expected him to have done as well as he has thus far. And certainly nobody would have been expecting him to be out shooting Joe Harris, a renowned three-point marksman. So Patty Mills, like you say, provided Kyrie's not there, and yeah, Patty Mills could be a real impactful player, and a player who I think a lot of teams would be quite glad to have on their team. It's kind of similar to Spencer Dinwiddie in a sense that Patty Mills would probably start for a fair amount of teams in this league, and fans of that team would be really happy to have Patty Mills. Yet we've somehow got him as a backup, which is astonishing and says a lot about the Nets team building and the kind of culture that's been built, that he's willing to sacrifice that in order to come and play. And yeah, he's just doing the job at the moment, so you certainly can't complain. But unfortunately, our celebrations from the win were short-lived. We were brought right back down to earth as the Miami Heat beat us 106-93. And this was a game where rebounding really, really was an issue for us, Aidan. It's something that's plagued us for a long while. What happened on the boards?
Yeah, you said it, man. I mean, it's been years now that we've been moaning about rebounding on this team, but I'd say this is probably the first game this season where I had kind of real concerns about the Nets rebounding. I mean, it was really bad last year. I think, especially in the playoffs, it was a big impact as to why we didn't win that Milwaukee series. Obviously, the injuries was the main impact, but apart from that, on the court, that was a real issue. And I had hopes that the new additions that we had would bring kind of big improvement, which personally is yet to be seen. And I don't know if that's because Millsap's not getting the minutes that he should. He's a really good rebounder, but they've just not worked it out yet. And fair play to the Miami Heat. They're obviously one of the best rebounding teams in the league this season. But if you look at the numbers now, a lot of that's down to that game against the Nets, because it's only been 6 games, and how they dominate the Nets in this one is definitely playing a factor in that. So they had 62 rebounds in total, and we only had 42, which is, you look at a Nets box score, usually they're losing on rebounds, but it's 17 offensive rebounds. That is just a disgusting number to look at on the box score there. And Steve Nash was talking about it after the game, and he called the offensive rebounds that the Nets are giving up the Achilles heel of the team. And then he went on to say something that really kind of grinded my gears. And he said that since we don't have the personnel that is naturally going to clean up the glass, we all need to come in and gang rebounders. It just annoys me, because that was the issue last year. Why have you not still got someone in to come in and do that job? They've had a whole off season to do that. There was a ton of guys that they could have got in that I remember us talking in the Discord going, oh, that's another one away. That's another one away. That's another one got away. And then we got obviously Millsap in, and then we got LaMarcus Aldridge back in, and that kind of masked over it. But it hasn't fixed the issue that the Nets just aren't winning the boards. And I think I'm trying to find how many points we gave up from second chances off of offensive rebounds. So obviously we got beat by, what was it, 13 points, and we gave up 15 points from second chances. So there you go. That's the difference maker right there. We gave up 15 points off of second chances, and we only got 2 points off of second chances ourselves. So there you go. There's a glaring hole in the sheet for me. I do find it embarrassing at times that we just give up so many of these offensive rebounds, and it doesn't even seem like players are not giving the full effort when they're trying to get them. It just seems like they don't know how to do it, and they don't know how to get into the right positions. And we've seen it already in the games this season, but this one was just really difficult to watch. And again, when there's been some decent offensive play from some of our guys, to just lose for a reason like that does hurt. And I hope it's a theme that doesn't continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it's someone that's plagued us for a while, and it was a game of a few positives, but one of those positives was that Joe Harris made history, as Joe Harris became the all-time leading three-point scorer in franchise history, overtaking the legendary Jason Kidd. Harris now has 817 threes to his name in a Nets jersey, and I was kind of doing a bit of a deep dive into some of the stats, and I was quite surprised to learn that he's having his second best season of his career in terms of threes per game made, despite the fact it's his second worst season of his career in terms of three-point percentage. How that works out, I don't know, but it does that. And yes, it's still early doors. I'm definitely expecting to see some improvement from Joe, both in terms of threes made per game and his percentage. He was shooting, about 50% last season, and like I said earlier on, he's sitting about 37, 38%. Maybe this is Joe just warming up and not wanting to go too hard on other teams at the moment. Maybe wants to give other guys a chance in this three-point kind of marksman contest this season and just blow them out the way in a few weeks. But I think it goes without saying, as frustrating as Joe can be, like you say, it's one in every 5 or 6 games where he really does go off. An informed Joe Harris makes this Nets team undoubtedly more dangerous, and especially without Kyrie. Yes, he's maybe not that third star, but when you've got a three-point shooter like Joe Harris, that makes all the difference for any team. Every team, especially in this league, needs a three-pointer. It's the way the league's going at the moment. And when you've got Joe Harris doing the business from deep, and we've also got Patty Mills doing it, I mean, that certainly adds up points. And if we can just kind of clean up things like the rebounding, then we'll be laughing. But yeah, I think the sooner we can sort that out, get a bit more consistent, we're going to be on to something good. I'm confident, as much as some people may be doubting the Nets already. But we kind of closed the week from the games we previewed last week with a 105-98 win over the Pacers, and it was just fantastic to get back to winning ways. And rumour has it that Torrey Craig is still sliding, trying to get away from trying to block Kevin Durant, should I say. Aidan, what was your kind of takeaway from this game against the Pacers?
I just think it was absolutely incredible to see James Harden go out there on Friday night and look like pre-injury James Harden for the first time. It was just I think it was more of a relief to just see him go out there and give a performance like that, because James Harden was absolutely fantastic on Friday. 29 points, 8 rebounds and 8 assists. That's a James Harden stat line. Like, we've not seen it yet this season. I mean, he was king of the triple doubles last year, but to see him go out there and get numbers like that with a smile on his face, it really just told the story about how he felt on Friday night. And he was nailing his trademark step back jumper threes. He had some really, really nice passes, but most importantly, he was actually getting foul calls, because he's not been getting them so far this year. And it did feel like it was going to be another one of those nights where he wasn't getting calls. There were some really obvious ones in the first quarter that the refs weren't given. And you could see he was starting to get frustrated. But after that, he was starting to get the calls, and he even got fouled on 2 3-point attempts. And I mean, the numbers were massively telling. He had 16 points on the free throw line on 19 attempts at the line. And to put that into perspective, before the Pacers game, he only had 15 attempts. So that's 15 attempts in 5 games, and he had 19 attempts in that one game on Friday, which blows your mind a bit to see. But if you look at his numbers last year, he was getting 8 attempts a game last year. And then obviously this year, before Friday, he was only getting 3 attempts per game. So some people might not like that, but it's a huge part of his game regardless. And I think it's a massive skill to be able to get to the line. And I can't remember who it was, and shout out to whoever it was, but Matt done a UK Nets fans space on Twitter, just like a test one a couple of days ago. And someone came in and they made a great comment, and they said, James Harden is excellent at drawing fouls that are actually fouls, whereas someone like Trae Young, he forces fouls by like backing into someone, whereas James Harden is just so gifted at actually getting fouled. And yeah, as I say, other fans don't like it, but as a Nets fan, it's so important to see him get those type of fouls, because it is a huge part of his game, and it was very satisfying to see him get back and doing what he does best. So absolutely delighted for him, and to get the win with a James Harden stat line like that was really satisfying. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, just before I make my point, Harden, obviously that game came days after his kind of infamous, I can't do 20, 30 points. Now, whether that was him just, I don't know. But for him to come out and then do that just after it was phenomenal. And that's the kind of James Harden we need. It's the James Harden we've missed this year. And the praises, don't stop at James Harden in this game. The praises have to extend to LaMarcus Aldridge as well, who perhaps had his best game in a Nets uniform since his return. 21 points, 8 rebounds, a block, and a steal off the bench. And something that I found interesting when I was doing some more stat diving was, in each of the 2 games this season, he scored 20 or more points. We've won. In the other games that he's not scored 20 or more in, we've lost. So is LaMarcus Aldridge the key to the Nets winning? I don't know. But certainly when he's scoring and doing well, the Nets seem to do well. And one, I think, can only wonder what would have happened in the playoffs last year if we had Aldridge and he wasn't forced to retire for the health issues. It's obviously fantastic we've got him now. And there is going to become a time where you, I, Matt, and everyone else just needs to forget about those players. We're going to keep referencing it. But at the same time, the franchise needs to move on. We need to move on. We can't keep going back to that point. And we now need to look forward, and hopefully Aldridge can make a difference this year round in the playoffs against some of the bigger guys that we struggled against. And I'm just hopeful that he's able to keep this up. It's someone who we know all about. He's been in the league for a long, long time, been one of the kind of top performing players for years. And yeah, it's just fantastic. Kind of similar to Patty Mills, that we've got Aldridge. Aldridge, he'll be in and out the starting lineup this year, I think, but I think there would be some teams where he probably would start nearly every single game. So the fact, again, we've kind of got him as a backup, kind of start a combo, I think is fantastic for the Nets. But with the game recaps out of the way, it's time for us to look ahead. There's another busy week of Nets basketball action starting tonight as we take on the Detroit Pistons for the first of 2 times this week. We're due to face the Pistons in about 2 hours' time from now. And Aidan, what are you kind of thinking ahead of the first Pistons matchup?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, after a solid win against the Pacers, it's definitely good to get a run of games like this. I don't know about you, you're looking at those 4, but it's nice to see winnable games. And when I say winnable, every game's winnable with a Nets team like that. But you expect the Nets to go into those 4, in my eyes, and win. I think they're the better team out of all those ones, and obviously to get 2 games against the Pistons, who are definitely one of the worst teams in the league, it's important to go out there and win. And we were talking about Joe Harris earlier, but these are the games that you want him to go out there and get 25, 30 points, with, say, getting 8 or 9 threes. I know that's a lot, but that's what you're wanting from him. You want him to use these games to maybe get those open looks that you might not get against someone like the Heat, and make his shots. So yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing the Nets play tonight and playing against Friday again against the Pistons, because I think that's 2 games that we really need to show our dominance and show how good we actually are. As for the other 2, obviously the Hawks and then the Raptors, 2 good teams and 2 teams that caused us a lot of hassle last year. Obviously we don't have Kyrie, and Kyrie or not, I still think that we should be beating both those teams, and we obviously had them last year and they were still tough games, but with the teams we have now, I expect us to win both those games as well. I mean, the Hawks is going to be a tough one. They've been playing really well this season so far, and they seem to have taken another leap. And the Raptors as well seem to have come back to a bit of form since they're back in their home turf. I watched their game the other night, and they do look a lot better. But yeah, I just think it's a stretch of 4 games where we should really be winning. And again, James Harden looked back on track on Friday night. So hopefully we can see another run of games where he's looking dominant and picking up plenty of points. So yeah, I'm confident going into these 4. What do you think about these ones?
I'm in complete agreement regarding the Pistons. Like you say, one of the worst teams in the league at the moment, and they're likely to be one of the bottom teams come the end of the season. So really, we should be winning both of these encounters, no questions asked, regardless of whether we maybe rest KD or Harden for the Friday night game with that Raptors game next Sunday in mind. The Hawks, Trae Young always causes us problems, and it'll be interesting to see the kind of foul drawing derby between him and James Harden. I'm expecting this to probably be the closest to the matches this week, and it's going to be exciting. The Hawks are a very good team, and probably only a piece or 2 or maybe an extra year or 2 kind of growth away from being a contender. That they do have some really good pieces, they're a good young team, and they've made the same start as us. They're also 3-3 at time of recording, and although they're on a 2-game losing streak, and by the time we face them, that could stretch to 3 if they lose to the Wizards, we can't take them lightly. That said, if they do indeed lose their next one against the Wizards, I hope we completely pile on the misery and take advantage of their poor form and win. As for the Raptors, I know the Hawks game is going to be close, but I think the Raptors is perhaps the most difficult one. Just going on history, the Raptors are currently sitting above us in the standings, are on a good run of form themselves, having won each of their last 3, and their team have traditionally struggled against for a good few years. We've only won 2 of our last 10 meetings against them. Granted, 2 of those wins have come in the last 4, which would suggest things are turning. But even then, I'm just not entirely sure about this one. But I'd absolutely love if we could grab a second straight win over them with that. One of our last 2 wins over them coming in that last game last season against them. So with our kind of thoughts for those games shared, it's now time to go on to BK to UK Pick'em. Last season, we'd always share our predictions, but never tracked them. So this season, we're keeping a running total. Each week, all of us will guess the wins and losses for each week. And for each game you get right, you get a point. As things stand, Matt and Aidan are leading the way, joint on 5 points each, whilst I'm sitting in last on 2 points. And I'm just going easy on the boys and letting them get a wee bit ahead and feel a bit confident before I storm away and get every game right as of next week. So Aidan, 4 games this week. How do you see things going?
Yeah, just from going on what I said, you've maybe put a bit of doubt in my mind after your talk about the Raptors there. I mean, I've been watching the games and Scotty Barnes is the leading the way for Rookie of the Year for them. So potentially it could be one of the ones that we slip up. But no, I'm going to go back to what I said a lot last year. But 4-0, I can see us winning all these games, and I think I'd be disappointed if we didn't. What are you saying this week?
I'm going to join you and go 4-0. Prior to the podcast, and I know what I've just said about the Raptors, I originally had us winning the rest and losing to the Raptors, but no, I think if we win those 3, we'll be high on confidence. There's going to be a lot of momentum, and you don't know what's going to happen to the Raptors between now and then, but we can really only concern ourselves with ourselves, really. So, yeah, I'm going to say 4-0 like you. Matt hasn't got back in touch with his predictions as of yet, but we'll be sure to add that to the tally next week. And we'll make sure he's not cheating. We'll make sure he's got those predictions in plenty of time. But Before we wrap things up, we do have a listener question, and that comes from Theo from the Discord, also of the Met the Criteria podcast. And he asks, the Scottish contingent were all very confident that we would get off to a red-hot start this season. Has what you've seen so far affected your expectations for the rest of the year? Aidan, are your expectations being changed by how we've started?
What a fitting question, considering it's the Scottish contingent is taking over the podcast tonight. But yeah, I mean, I probably didn't take into account how much settling in the Nets would need this year. I mean, I just assumed that after last year, when we obviously had the Harden blockbuster trade, that there was always going to be kind of settling in issues because we didn't have a full off season with Harden and obviously losing 3 really important guys in that trade. But this year, I just assumed because we got our business done quite early, that an off-season, the team would come in, they'd all know how to play with each other. But I'd say it probably looks worse kind of settling in-wise than it ever has. There's been a lot of really obvious turnovers and things like that. So yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a adjustment period kind of for the first 10 games or so before we see the Nets really settle in and get to know each other on the court. But in terms of my expectations, has it affected it? I don't think so. I've seen enough from the team to know that we can still compete for a championship. We could really do with Kyrie Irving. I think everyone's in agreement now. We'd rather have him on the court than sitting at home or playing touch football, whatever he's doing in New York at the moment. But yeah, and then we've obviously seen poor starts from certain guys like Joe Harris and Nick Claxton as well hasn't been performing to his usual standards. So I'm confident that once those guys kind of get together and find the rhythm, that we can kind of find some form and be much more comfortable. So I don't want to say that it's affected my expectations yet. The only thing that says change is I think we need Kyrie more than I probably thought at the start of the season. But I'm certainly not panicking yet. And these losses against teams like Charlotte, I think it's teams that will beat further down the line. So yeah, not panicking yet. We'll give it another 10 games or so, and then you can ask me again. What do you think?
My expectations have not been changed at all. Things certainly have started slower than I'd have hoped, but we're 3-3. We're not 0-6. There's still 76 games to go, and we could finish the season 79-3. So I don't know why there's a lot of concern at the moment. Yes, we probably should have started a bit better, but still far too early to hit that panic button. I think some of the early season mishaps will just kind of be weeded out. It's only natural when, like you say, that there was a large turnover of players again, as much as we've got some stars and some returning players, there was always going to be some adjustments required. And let's be honest, if we start poorly, it's not going to be the end of the world. We're still going to make the playoffs and a very good seed. And it's playoff basketball that counts, not the early season games against your Hornets and whatnot, who, with all due respect to them, probably aren't going to be high enough in the playoffs. We might maybe face them in the first round if things go well for them. But I think we just need to keep on side with the team at the moment. There's a very winnable 4 games coming up. And I mean, come next Sunday, we could be 7-3. And yeah, this question, I don't think even exists then. It's kind of the Nets have performed as expected. Every team, no matter who they are going to pick up losses throughout the season. Nets have picked up a few quite early doors. We all kind of predicted about 25-ish losses, I think. So ideally, we keep the losses as low as possible, but they're going to happen. And ideally, we don't go on runs where we lose. We can kind of keep losses spread out, if you like, if that's the best way of putting it. But I think that's all we've time for today. Thanks to Aidan as ever, and to all of you for listening and watching along with us. If you like what we do, then the best way that you can help us is to like, rate and review the podcast, subscribe to us on YouTube and share the episode on social media. Any help we can get to grow our audience is always very much appreciated. You can also support us by treating yourself to some fantastic UK Nets fans merch. Christmas is just around the corner, so grab yourself some nice UK Nets fans swag to go into the new year looking as great as ever. You can find a link to that in our Twitter bio. We'll see you next week for another episode. Take it easy.